Cass had never met anything she couldn't outswim, outdrink, or outdive. But now, staring at the slate-gray ocean of Kepler-22 billion as it heaved against the pylons of her ramshackle dive operation, she wondered if this time she'd met her match. Bankruptcy? She ran a hand through her salt-stiffened hair and squinted at the horizon where twin suns cast strange, polarized light across the water. The entire station, just a floating collection of shipping containers she'd christened Deep Blue Expeditions, creaked beneath her as if acknowledging her predicament. "Power's out in the East Quarter again," came a voice from her comm unit. "Third time this week, V," Cass replied, addressing the station's AI. "Fourth," V corrected, Australian accent somehow managing to sound both cheerful and judgmental. And Collection sent 3 new notices. "Fantastic. Most aliens couldn't handle deep ocean pressure. Their bodies weren't built for it, requiring complex exoskeletons just to function, which gave humans a magnificent advantage in underwater operations, one that Cass had bet her entire savings on. But she'd underestimated the xenophobia. No matter how qualified she was, clients chose operators from their own species, even if they could only skim the surface while she could free dive to depths that would crush their equipment. "There is a ship approaching," V announced suddenly. "Research Classification, Consortium Registry." That got her attention. The Galactic Exploration Consortium wasn't known for venturing to backwater operations like hers. "How long?" 18 minutes to docking range. They're requesting permission to board." Cass glanced down at her stained work clothes, then at the cluttered, rusting operation around her. Nothing she could do about any of it in 18 minutes. "Permission granted. Pull up everything we have on current consortium deep-sea projects." "Already done. Nothing in this sector." "Interesting." By the time the sleek research vessel docked alongside Deep Blue's main platform, Cass had managed to clear enough space in the operations room to look merely cluttered rather than chaotic. She'd also changed into her least patched jumpsuit. The main airlock cycled open, and 3 figures stepped through. Tulev, their insectoid bodies encased in exoskeletons they needed to function in this gravity, and between them a Myriad, tall and willowy with characteristic silver skin. "Welcome to Deep Blue Expeditions," Cass said. "I'm Cassandra Reyes, owner and head diver. What can I do for the consortium today?" "I am Director Naya Sen," the Myriad said, her voice carrying musical harmonic overtones. "These are my colleagues, Specialists Taz and Core. We're here about a recovery operation that requires specialized diving capabilities." "You've come to the right place, then." "Yes, we're aware of your species' unique pressure adaptations," Naya interrupted with a dismissive wave. "That's precisely why we've come to you despite the," she glanced around the worn equipment, "remote nature of your operation." Cass swallowed her pride. Money was money, and pride wouldn't pay for station repairs. "What exactly are you looking to recover?" "Approximately 200 kilometers east of this position, our surveys have detected what appears to be the ruins of a pre-collapse civilization beneath the ocean floor. Initial scans suggest artifacts of significant scientific value." "Pre-collapse," Cass frowned. "This planet was uninhabited when it was surveyed." "Evidently not," said one of the Lev Taz, she thought. "Our readings indicate structured ruins at a depth of approximately 1,500 meters." Cass whistled. "That's deep. No wonder you came looking for a human." "Indeed," Naya said. "Most species diving technology fails beyond 700 meters in these conditions. The pressure would crush your suits like eggshells," Cass finished for her. "But not mine. And not me. So you can perform this recovery?" Naya asked, a hint of skepticism in her harmonics. "I've gone deeper," Cass said, not mentioning that her deepest dives had been on Earth, not here. "But I'll need details. What kind of artifacts? How large? Any active technology? And most importantly, what's your budget?" The other Lev Core stepped forward, mandibles clicking rapidly. "The budget is sufficient. The consortium has authorized full funding for this operation." Cass didn't bother hiding her smile now. "In that case, let's talk specifics." 2 hours later, Cass stood in her equipment room, staring at a holographic projection of the underwater ruins. The consortium representatives had departed, leaving behind a data package with scan results, coordinates, and the most generous contract she'd seen in years. "This seems too good to be true," she murmured. "Why would the consortium offer this much money for some old artifacts?" Perhaps they are genuinely unique, V suggested. The scans do indicate unusual material composition. Maybe Cass zoomed in on a section of the ruins. Or maybe there's something they're not telling me. There's always something clients don't tell you. According to the terms, they'd be sending a technical specialist to assist with surface operations, arriving tomorrow. Cass hoped whoever they sent knew their way around a dive operation and wouldn't interfere with her process. The transport shuttle arrived exactly on schedule the next morning. Cass watched from the observation deck as a single figure descended, duffel bag slung over one shoulder. He was tall and wiry, with close-cropped dark hair and features suggesting East Asian ancestry. "Elias Chen," she called as he reached the bottom of the ramp. He looked up, squinting slightly in the dual sun light. "That's me. You must be Cassandra Reyes." "Cass," she corrected. "Nobody calls me Cassandra, except people trying to serve me collection notices." His mouth twitched. "Eli, then." As they walked toward the main structure, Cass sized him up. He moved with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to shipboard life, his eyes scanning their surroundings with professional assessment rather than judgment. "So," she said, 3 years with the consortium. "What brings a human all the way out to this arm of the galaxy?" "The usual, research opportunities, decent pay. Plus Earth got a little crowded after the coastal migrations." That was an understatement. Rising sea levels had pushed hundreds of millions inland over the last century. "And you?" he asked. "Running a solo dive operation on the edge of settled space isn't exactly a common career path." "I like the quiet," Cass said simply, "and the freedom." They reached the operations center where Cass activated the main projector. "V, load the site schematics, please." The hologram flickered to life, displaying a three-dimensional topographic map of the ocean floor with a pulsing red indicator marking their target site. "Here's what we know," Cass began. "The site sits at approximately 1,500 meters on the edge of a continental shelf. Scans show structures consistent with artificial construction. Based on the briefing, I've identified 3 primary target locations within the ruins." The consortium emphasized this central chamber. "And your dive plan?" Eli asked. "Single descent. I'll carry a specialized collection unit for the artifacts. Maximum bottom time of 22 minutes, then ascent with multiple decompression stops. Total operation time approximately 4 hours." "That's an aggressive profile," Eli noted, frowning slightly. "It's what the consortium asked for," Cass pointed out. "Rush job, remember." "Even so, the physiological stress at that depth is something I've handled before." She wasn't about to let this newcomer question her capabilities. "My suit is custom designed for these pressures. Want to see it?" She led him to what had once been the station's medical bay, but now served as her equipment room. Against the far wall stood Cass's pride and possession, a sleek diving suit mounted on a maintenance frame. Unlike bulky mechanical exosuits, Cass's suit was a marvel of minimalist design, a form-fitting shell of advanced composites over a pressure-resistant underlayer. The helmet featured an unusually wide visor. "This is the Phantom," Cass said with unmistakable pride. "I designed most of it myself. Standard designs try to create a rigid shell to resist pressure. The Phantom works with pressure instead of against it, distributes it across the entire surface while maintaining internal equilibrium." Eli circled the suit, examining it from all angles with growing respect. "The energy requirements must be enormous." "Would be, except I've integrated a kinetic recovery system. The suit harvests energy from movement and pressure differentials." "Impressive engineering," Eli conceded, "but it's still pushing human limits to stay at that depth for 22 minutes. That's why I designed this." Cass showed him her modified rebreather. "Higher oxygen density plus a filter system that processes CO2 more efficiently than standard units. Gives me about 30% more bottom time." She turned to face him directly. "I know these waters, I know this equipment, and I know my limits." "Fair enough," Eli said after studying her for a moment. "But the monitoring systems I brought aren't just for the consortium's peace of mind. They'll give us better real-time data during the dive." "I'm not opposed to better data," Cass said. "Just to anyone thinking they can run my operation better than I can." "Not trying to run anything," Eli said, raising his hands slightly. "Just trying to make sure we both get what we need." "And what do you need, exactly?" "Same as you, I imagine. A successful recovery, a completed contract, and maybe enough credibility to fund my own research eventually. He offered a small smile. Not all of us consortium employees are corporate drones. So what is your research? Cass asked, her hostility easing. Deep-sea communication systems. Current tech barely functions past certain depths, and the lag time makes real-time interaction nearly impossible. I'm developing a system using quantum entanglement principles to eliminate that lag. Ambitious, Cass acknowledged, and potentially very profitable. The profit gets the consortium to fund it, Eli admitted. But for me, it's about exploration. The oceans on any world are the last real frontier. There was genuine enthusiasm in his voice that Cass couldn't help responding to. It had been a long time since she'd spoken to someone who shared her fascination with the deep. Well, she said, if your monitoring systems help make this dive safer and more productive, I'm all for it. When do we start integrating my equipment? The cargo should be unloaded by now. Let's get to work. It took the rest of the day to integrate Eli's monitoring equipment with Deep Blue systems. Despite her initial skepticism, Cass had to admit the consortium tech was impressive. Lightweight, powerful, with sensing capabilities far beyond anything she could afford. By evening, they had established a primary control station and were running simulations of the dive profile. Eli worked efficiently and without unnecessary chatter, his questions relevant and showing a deeper understanding of dive operations than she'd expected. The thermal layer at 600 meters is going to play havoc with standard comms, he noted. Cass nodded. I usually switch to low-frequency acoustic signals below the thermocline. What about visual feeds? Helmet cam with local storage. Real-time transmission isn't reliable at depth. Eli frowned. That won't work for this operation. The consortium wants live monitoring. Physics doesn't care what the consortium wants, Cass replied. That's why I brought this. Eli pulled up schematics for a device Cass didn't recognize. Prototype quantum-coupled relay buoys. We drop them at intervals through the water column. They create a chain of entangled particles that can transmit data instantaneously. Cass raised an eyebrow. Your research project. Eli nodded. Field test opportunity. The consortium doesn't know it's experimental. So you're using their mission to test your equipment. They're using me to monitor you, Eli pointed out with a slight smile. Seems fair. Cass laughed despite herself. I'm starting to think you might not be completely terrible, Chen. High praise indeed, Rays. The ship's intercom interrupted their banter. Incoming transmission from Director Sen, V announced. Put her through. Nea's silver face appeared on screen. Progress report. Equipment integration is proceeding on schedule, Eli said smoothly. We'll be ready tomorrow. Excellent, Nea's vertical pupils contracted slightly. And the recovery protocol has been established. We were just discussing that, Cass said. Your scans weren't specific about what I'm looking for. Our primary interest is in potential data storage devices. The civilization appears to have used crystalline matrices for information archival. These would be roughly cylindrical objects, approximately 30 centimeters in length, with a translucent, faceted appearance. That's more detail than yesterday, Cass noted. Additional analysis was completed overnight, Nea said smoothly. Anything else I should know? Cass asked. Like why you're so interested in thousand-year-old data storage. The scientific value should be self-evident, Captain. This could be the only surviving record of a pre-collapse society in this sector. And that's worth rushing an extremely technical deep-sea recovery operation. The consortium has its reasons for prioritizing this project, Nea said firmly. Reasons reflected in your compensation package. The implied message was clear, take the money and don't ask questions. We'll be ready, Cass said. Dive commences at 800 tomorrow. The screen went dark. Well, she's a ray of sunshine, Cass muttered. Morning arrived with a steel-gray sky and choppy seas. Cass went through her pre-dive routine methodically, light breakfast, careful hydration, final equipment checks. By the time she arrived at the dive platform, Eli had already set up the surface monitoring station. Systems are green across the board, he reported. The consortium's maintaining position about 5 kilometers out. The process of donning the Phantom was one Cass had refined through years of solo diving. The underlayer went on first, a second skin of pressure-resistant material. Next came the life support systems, the modified rebreather body temperature regulators. Finally, she stepped into the main suit components, the helmet locking into place with a satisfying click. "Comms check," Eli's voice came through with perfect clarity. "Receiving," Cass confirmed. "Systems nominal." She moved to the edge of the platform, where a mechanical winch would lower her through the first 100 meters. Beyond that, she would free fall through the water column, controlling her descent with the suit's buoyancy systems. "Ready for deployment," she said, connecting the winch hook to her harness. "Stand by," Eli replied, then more quietly, "Good luck down there, come back in one piece." "Planning on it," Cass said. Commencing dive. The winch hummed to life, lowering her toward the surface of the ocean. The moment of transition always gave her a brief thrill, leaving one world for another, more ancient and mysterious one. The water closed over her helmet, and the sounds of the platform faded, replaced by the subtle background noises of her suit systems. Through her visor, she watched the surface recede above her, transforming from a distinct boundary to a shimmering ceiling of light. "Passing 50 meters," she reported, detaching from winch in 3, 2, 1. With practiced precision, Cass released the winch hook and adjusted her buoyancy to begin a controlled descent. The first relay buoy deployed from her belt with a soft click, its blue status light blinking. "Relay 1 active," Eli confirmed. "Telemetry is stable." Cass continued downward, the water darkening around her as she passed through 100 meters, then 200. Another relay buoy deployed automatically. The pressure increased steadily, the Phantom distributing it evenly across her body. "Approaching the thermocline at 600 meters," she reported. "Prepare for temporary telemetry fluctuation." The thermocline appeared as a visible distortion in the water, a boundary where temperature dropped dramatically. As Cass passed through it, she felt the suit's thermal regulation systems kick in. Below the thermocline, the character of the ocean changed. The light from above was now a distant glow, and the dominant illumination came from the suit's lamps. The water took on a deep indigo quality, occasionally punctuated by bioluminescent flashes of native life forms. "Passing 800 meters," Cass reported, beginning to see some biological activity. "Visual feed is excellent," Eli confirmed. "The consortium scientists are quite excited." As she descended past 1,000 meters, the underwater landscape changed dramatically. The gradual slope dropped away into vast darkness. Cass adjusted her position, using thrusters to move horizontally along the cliff face toward the ruins. "Passing 1,200 meters," she reported. "Approaching target zone." "Copy that," Eli replied. Activating additional sensor packages, we're starting to detect some unusual energy readings from the site. That made Cass pause. Energy readings. What kind? Low level, nothing immediately concerning. Could be natural geothermal activity or possibly reactive materials in the ruins. They didn't mention anything about active energy sources in the briefing, Cass pointed out. "I know," Eli said, tension in his voice. "Proceed with caution." At 1,400 meters, her lights illuminated the first signs of the ruins. A straight edge protruding from the sediment, too regular to be natural. As she drew closer, more structures emerged, broken columns, partial walls, and terraced platforms built into the cliff face. "I have visual on the site," she reported. "Definitely artificial structures. Construction appears to be some composite material. Not stone, not metal, but something in between." Cass navigated through what might have once been a courtyard, now open to the ocean, and approached a more intact structure built into the cliff. A doorway-like opening led into darkness. "I think I've found the central chamber," she reported, preparing to enter. "Readings are intensifying," Eli warned. "That energy signature is definitely stronger near that opening. Dangerous levels. Not according to standard metrics, but it's unusual." Cass hesitated at the threshold. Years of diving had taught her to respect her instincts, and something about this situation felt off. "Consortium vessel is requesting you proceed immediately," Eli added, resignation in his tone. "Of course they are," Cass muttered, entering chamber now. As she passed through the opening, her lights revealed a space that had remained remarkably preserved. Unlike the exterior ruins, this chamber showed minimal signs of marine growth or sediment accumulation. The chamber was roughly circular, with what appeared to be control pedestals arranged around a central dais. The walls were inscribed with intricate patterns that seemed to catch her light differently, almost reflecting it in shifting patterns. "Are you getting this?" she asked, sweeping her helmet cam across the chamber. "Crystal clear," Eli confirmed. "Remarkable preservation. It's almost as if it was sealed until recently," Cass finished for him. She approached the central dais carefully. On top of it sat the object that had to be their target, a cylindrical crystal matrix, exactly as Nea had described. However, unlike the inert artifact she'd expected, this crystal was glowing with a faint internal light that pulsed in slow, regular intervals. "I've found the target," Cass reported. "But it's active, Eli. This thing is powered somehow." There was a moment of silence, then Eli's voice tense. "The consortium scientists are agitated. Director Sen is ordering immediate recovery." "Of course she is," Cass said grimly. "But I'm not touching this thing until I know what it is." She examined the crystal without making contact. The internal light appeared to shift and change as she moved around it, almost as if tracking her movements. The pulsing had increased in frequency since she entered. "I think it's responding to my presence," she said. "Cass," Eli's voice was low and urgent, as if speaking away from the main comms. "I'm picking up communications chatter from the consortium vessel. This isn't just a data storage device. They think it's some kind of containment unit." "Containment for what?" "I don't know. But they want it badly enough." His voice cut off briefly. "They're threatening to revoke the contract if there's any further delay." Cass circled the dais slowly. Something in the patterns on the walls caught her attention, a repeating motif that seemed to radiate outward from where the crystal sat. "I think this whole chamber is connected to whatever this thing is doing," she said. "The patterns look like circuitry or conduits." As if in response, the crystal's pulsing accelerated, and the patterns on the walls began to glow with the same internal light. "Energy readings are spiking," Eli warned. Cass made a decision. "I'm deploying a remote sensor before I touch anything." She detached a small probe from her utility belt and placed it on the edge of the dais. The moment it made contact, the crystal's pulsing synchronized with the probe's signal light. "It's interfacing with the probe," Cass said, surprised. "That shouldn't be possible." The probe's readout showed rapidly changing data streams that made little sense, except for one pattern she recognized. "Eli, that signal pattern looks like a quantum entanglement signature, similar to your relay buoys." "I see it," he confirmed. "This technology shouldn't exist in a pre-collapse civilization. It's too advanced." "Unless they collapsed because of how advanced they were," Cass suggested. The crystal's pulsing had stabilized into a regular rhythm, the wall patterns casting the chamber in an eerie light. "I think it's some kind of communication device," Cass said slowly. "Not data storage, it's actively transmitting." "To where?" Eli asked. "Or to what?" Cass added. "I'm going to recover it, but using maximum containment protocols." "Copy that," Eli said, relief evident. Proceeding with recovery. Cass carefully removed the specialized container from her belt. As she prepared to lift the crystal, the pulsing accelerated once more, almost as if aware of her intentions. Working deliberately, Cass positioned the container beside the crystal. The moment she touched the artifact, a shock ran up her arm, not painful, but intense, like information flowing directly into her nervous system. Instantly, the crystal's light flared brightly, and the patterns on the walls blazed in response. "What's happening?" Eli demanded. "Your biometrics just spiked." "I don't know," Cass managed. "It's like it's scanning me somehow." Images flashed through her mind too quickly to process. Fragments of information, glimpses of places she'd never seen. Then the connection broke as she dropped the crystal into the containment unit and sealed it. The light in the chamber immediately dimmed, the wall patterns fading back to dormant state. Cass stood frozen for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. Cass, respond." Eli's voice was edged with panic. "I'm here," she said shakily. "Artifact is secured in the containment unit. I'm okay." "Your neural patterns went haywire. What happened?" "Some kind of interface, like it was trying to communicate directly." She shook her head. "Let's discuss it after I get back up. Beginning ascent now." "Copy that," Eli replied. "Consortium vessel acknowledges there, very eager to receive the artifact." "I bet they are," Cass muttered. As she began her ascent, the containment unit at her hip seemed to grow heavier with each meter, as if the weight of the unknown inside it was more than just physical. The ascent from depth was always a test of patience. Where the descent was active, a journey of discovery, coming back up meant enforced stillness, mandatory pauses to let dissolved gases safely exit the body's tissues. Today, as she held position at 900 meters for her first decompression stop, Cass's mind was anything but peaceful. The containment unit at her belt seemed to pulse with presence. She couldn't shake the memory of that moment of contact, the flood of alien sensation, the impression of vast intelligence. Biometrics still showing elevated stress levels, Eli's voice came through her helmet. Everything okay down there? Fine, Cass replied automatically. Then, recognizing the concern, just processing, that was. Not a normal artifact. The consortium scientists are practically climbing the walls up here, Eli said, lowering his voice. Director Sen tried to order me to bypass the remaining decompression stops and bring you up immediately. Cass snorted. I hope you told her where to stick that order. In the politest scientific terminology, Eli confirmed, and Cass could hear the smile in his voice. But they're definitely not acting like this is a routine archaeological recovery. No kidding. Cass adjusted her position, compensating for a subtle current. Eli, when I touched that crystal, it communicated with me somehow, or tried to. There was a pause before Eli responded, his voice carefully neutral. The consortium monitoring feed is active. Maybe save the details for when you're back on the platform. Message received. Whatever had happened down there, the consortium was listening in, and Eli didn't want her revealing too much. Copy that, she said. Moving to next decompression stop in 5 minutes. The remainder of the ascent followed standard procedure. Throughout, she maintained professional communications, reporting only technical details. The containment unit remained secure at her side, but she couldn't ignore the strange sense that its contents were somehow aware of her. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Cass broke through into open air. The platform's recovery team, which consisted solely of Eli, operated the lift that would bring her safely aboard. As the mechanism began to raise her from the water, Cass saw Eli's face appear at the platform edge, his expression a mixture of relief and concern. She noticed with unease that a shuttle from the consortium vessel had docked at the station. Welcome back, Eli said as the lift deposited her on the platform. How are you feeling? Like I need to get out of this suit, Cass replied, reaching for her helmet release. As the seal broke, she leaned close to Eli. Don't let them take the artifact until we talk, she whispered. He gave a nearly imperceptible nod, then stepped back as the platform door opened and 3 figures emerged. Director Nea and the 2 Lev specialists. Captain Reyes, Nea said, vertical pupils fixed on the containment unit at Cass's belt. Congratulations on a successful recovery. We'll take custody of the artifact immediately. Standard procedure requires post-dive equipment shutdown and data download first, Cass said, slipping out of her suit efficiently. The artifact stays with me until that's complete. Nea's silver features tightened. That won't be necessary. The containment unit is self-sufficient. My operation, my procedures, Cass said firmly. She nodded to Eli. Specialist Chen can confirm this is standard protocol. Eli stepped forward. The dive data is integrated with the artifact telemetry. Separating them prematurely could compromise the scientific record. The 2 Lev exchanged clicks, mandibles moving in agitation. Nea's expression remained controlled, but a slight harmonic entered her voice, a sign of frustration. Very well, how long will this procedure take? 30 minutes, Cass said, moving toward the equipment room with the containment unit still attached to her belt. Specialist Chen, if you'll assist me. As soon as the equipment room door closed behind them, Cass activated a privacy field, a security measure she'd installed for client confidentiality. We have about 2 minutes before they get suspicious, she said quickly, placing the containment unit on the workbench. Whatever this thing is, they know more about it than they told us, and I don't trust their intentions. Eli nodded, already accessing the station's secure systems. I intercepted some of their internal communications while you were ascending. They referred to the artifact as a node and mentioned something called awakening protocols. That tracks with what I experienced, Cass said. When I touched it, it wasn't just storing data. It was active, searching, almost like it was trying to restore a connection. A connection to what? I wish I knew. Cass examined the containment unit. But I'm not handing this over until I do. Can you create a diversion, something to give me time to secure it somewhere they won't look? Eli hesitated briefly before nodding. I can trigger a controlled systems fluctuation, make it look like there's an issue with the power grid. It would force emergency protocols, give you maybe 5 minutes. Do it, Cass said. I'll hide the artifact and meet you in operations. We'll stall them as long as possible while we figure out what to do. Eli's fingers flew over the console as he programmed the false emergency. Cass, if we do this, we're actively interfering with a consortium operation. That's career suicide for me, and probably worse for you. I know, she said grimly, but something tells me letting them have this thing without understanding it first would be even worse. She met his gaze directly. You don't have to do this. You can walk away, tell them I went rogue, and miss the chance to uncover what has the mighty consortium scrambling like this. Eli shook his head. Not a chance. A surge of gratitude washed through Cass. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Eli said, finishing his programming. Emergency protocols initiating in 30 seconds. Where will you hide it? Cass activated a concealed panel that slid back to reveal a small, shielded compartment. Old smuggler's trick, lead-lined and signal-blocked. You were a smuggler, Eli asked, raising an eyebrow. I've had an eclectic career, Cass replied, placing the containment unit in the compartment. Diversification is important in uncertain economies. Just as the panel slid closed, the lights flickered and alarm tones sounded throughout the station. Emergency lighting activated, bathing the room in a dull red glow. They exited to find the station in controlled chaos. The emergency protocols had activated security bulkheads and initiated backup life support systems, standard procedure for a potential power failure on an ocean platform. What's happening? Nea demanded as they entered operations. Power grid fluctuation, Eli explained, moving to the console with convincing urgency. The station's running emergency diagnostics now. And the artifact? Nea asked sharply. Where is it? Secure in the equipment room, Cass lied. All sensitive materials are automatically locked down during emergencies. Nea's eyes narrowed. This is most inconvenient. Our schedule requires immediate transport. Safety protocols override scheduling concerns, Cass replied. The diagnostics should complete in about 20 minutes. The Lev named Taz stepped forward, mandibles clicking rapidly. Our scans detect no actual power failures in the station infrastructure. Only your control systems show anomalies. Eli didn't miss a beat. That's exactly the concern. If the control systems are compromised while reporting normal infrastructure readings, it could indicate a more serious problem. Taz and Core exchanged more clicks. Then the latter approached Nea and spoke in low tones. Cass couldn't hear what was said, but Nea's expression darkened. Captain Reyes, she said, her harmonic tones now carrying an unmistakable edge. I believe you are being deliberately obstructive. The consortium requires immediate access to the artifact. This is not a request. The atmosphere in the room had shifted from tense to hostile. The Lev had positioned themselves near the door, blocking the exit, Cass realized. Perhaps, Nea continued, it would help if I clarified the situation. The artifact is indeed of pre-collapse origin, but it is significantly more important than a data storage device. It is, in fact, a control node for a network that spans this entire sector. A network of what? Eli asked. Power, Nea said simply. The civilization that built those ruins mastered energy manipulation on a scale we barely comprehend. Their technology operated on principles that unified quantum entanglement with gravitational manipulation. The nodes served as access points. Cass exchanged a glance with Eli. And the consortium wants this for research purposes, she asked skeptically. The consortium recognizes the strategic value. Controlled access to this network would revolutionize interstellar travel, communications, perhaps even warfare. There it is, Cass muttered. Now, Nea continued, I will ask one final time, deactivate the emergency protocols and surrender the artifact. The implicit threat hung in the air. Cass weighed their options quickly. She and Eli were outnumbered, and while she might be able to hold her own against one of the Lev, their exoskeletons gave them significant strength advantages. V, she said suddenly. Initiate protocol Blackwater. Voice confirmation required, V responded immediately. Cassandra Ray's authorization Echo 97 Delta. Protocol confirmed, V replied. Initiating in 3, 2, 1. The station's lights went out completely, plunging the room into darkness before auxiliary systems provided minimal illumination. Simultaneously, a series of mechanical sounds echoed through the station, bulkhead sealing, systems locking down. What have you done? Nea demanded. Full station lockdown, Cass said calmly. No one gets in or out without my authorization. Standard protection against pirates and corporate raiders. This is outrageous, Nea hissed, her harmonics distorting with anger. You are interfering with a priority consortium operation. Because right now, we're going to have a real conversation about what that artifact actually is and what happens when it's awakened. The standoff lasted for a tense moment. Then Eli spoke in a deliberately reasonable tone. Director Sen, Captain Reyes has legitimate concerns, especially after what happened when she made direct contact with it. Perhaps full disclosure would facilitate cooperation. Nea's vertical pupils contracted to thin slits as she studied them both. Finally, she inclined her head slightly. Very well, what do you wish to know? Everything, Cass said. Starting with what happened when I touched that crystal and why the consortium is really so interested. Nea gestured to one of the Lev, who activated a small hollow projector. A three-dimensional map of the sector appeared with several points highlighted. The civilization that built the underwater structures was not native to this planet, Nea began. They were visitors, far more advanced. They established a network of installations across this sector approximately 3,000 years ago. The holomap zoomed in, showing the planet they were on and several others in neighboring systems. Each installation housed technology that tapped into what they called the substrate, a layer of reality that intersects with normal spacetime but operates under different rules. Through this substrate, they could transmit energy and information instantaneously across vast distances. Quantum entanglement on a massive scale, Eli murmured. Far beyond anything we've achieved, Nea confirmed. The nodes were access points to this network, capable of interfacing directly with organic neural systems. That explains what I felt, Cass said. It was scanning me trying to understand. Precisely. The nodes were designed to recognize authorized users through neural patterns. But why hide all this? Eli asked. Why not just explain the artifact's importance from the beginning? Nea's expression turned guarded. The consortium has competitors who would go to great lengths to acquire this technology. Secrecy was deemed necessary. That's not the whole truth, Cass said flatly. You said something about awakening protocols. What happens when the node awakens? The Lev specialists clicked nervously, and Nea shot them a quelling look before responding. When fully activated, we believe the node will reconnect to the larger network. It will attempt to reestablish communication with other nodes in the system. And that's bad because, Eli prompted, because we don't know what else might be listening, Nea admitted reluctantly. The civilization that built this network vanished suddenly and completely. Our leading theory is that they encountered something through their own technology, perhaps triggered a defense mechanism or attracted attention from elsewhere. Cass felt a chill. You think something destroyed them for using this network, and you still want to activate it. Under controlled conditions, Nea insisted. In a shielded facility with appropriate safeguards. The potential benefits are too great to ignore. And if whatever ended that civilization is still out there, waiting for someone to flip the switch again, Eli asked. That is a risk the consortium is prepared to manage. The cavalier response made Cass's decision for her. Not with my help, she said firmly. I'm not giving you the artifact until I understand exactly what it does and what safeguards work against whatever might be on the other end. Nea's patience visibly snapped. This is not a negotiation, Captain Reyes. The artifact belongs to the consortium by right of contract. You will surrender it immediately or face consequences. The contract specified archaeological recovery, not activating potentially dangerous alien technology, Cass pointed out. And threatening me isn't going to change my mind. Perhaps not, Nea said coldly, but there are other methods of persuasion. She turned to the Lev. Search the station. Find the artifact. You won't find it, Cass said, even as the two insectoid specialists headed for the door. And you can't override my lockdown protocols. We shall see. The standoff might have continued indefinitely, if not for the sudden blaring of alarm klaxons throughout the station. Red emergency lights began flashing, and V's voice came through with unusual urgency. Multiple hull breaches detected in the eastern quadrant, flooding in sections 12 through 16. Emergency bulkheads engaged. What the hell? Cass moved quickly to the monitoring station. V, give me visual on the eastern quadrant. The main screen activated, showing external camera feeds. Cass's blood ran cold. The eastern section of the platform was listing badly, with clear signs of explosive damage along its outer hull. As they watched, another small explosion erupted near one of the support pylons. Your colleagues seem to have taken matters into their own hands, Cass said accusingly to Nea. The Myriad appeared genuinely shocked. This is not consortium protocol. We would never. Save it, Cass cut her off. V, full damage report. Eastern quadrant compromised beyond recovery, V reported. Structural failure cascading to central sections. Platform stability at 63 and declining. Recommended action. Immediate evacuation. The Lev specialists, Eli said suddenly. Where are they? As if in answer, the operations center door slid open and the two Lev entered. But they weren't alone. A third figure followed them, humanoid but clearly not human, wearing an environmental suit of unfamiliar design. Director Sen, the newcomer said, voice distorted by a translation system. We've secured the station, but the artifact is not in the equipment room. We need its location immediately. Who the hell are you? Cass demanded. And what have you done to my platform? The figure turned toward her. Captain Reyes, I presume. I represent interests that intersect with the consortiums regarding the artifact. My associates have ensured that you understand the seriousness of our request. By blowing up my station, Cass's voice rose in fury. A regrettable but necessary demonstration, the figure replied coldly. The next charges will breach the central sections if the artifact is not surrendered within 5 minutes. Nea stepped forward, her harmonic tones sharp with anger. This action violates our agreement. The hegemony was to be consulted before any recovery operation. The name sent a chill through Cass. The hegemony was a loose coalition of systems rumored to employ methods even the consortium considered extreme. Circumstances changed when your team proved unable to secure the artifact efficiently, the hegemony agent replied. Our analysts detected the node's partial activation during recovery. Time is now a critical factor. Partial activation, Eli repeated. What does that mean? The agent ignored him, focusing on Cass. The location of the artifact, Captain, now. Cass's mind raced. The station was compromised, possibly beyond saving. These new players were clearly willing to use deadly force, but surrendering the artifact still seemed like the worst possible option. V, she said quietly. Evacuation status of Submersible Bay. Submersible Bay intact and operational, V responded. Escape vessel primed and ready. If I tell you where the artifact is, Cass said to the agent, you'll just kill us anyway. That is not my primary objective, the agent replied without emotion. My mission is to secure the node before full activation. Your survival is irrelevant but not specifically contraindicated. Not the most reassuring terms. It's in a shielded compartment in my quarters, Cass lied. I can retrieve it, but I'll need to release the lockdown protocols first. The agent consulted briefly with the Lev before nodding. You will be accompanied by my associates. Any deviation will result in immediate termination. Understood, Cass said. As she worked at the console, Cass caught Eli's eye and gave him the barest hint of a nod toward the left corridor, the one that led to the submersible bay. His slight nod in return confirmed he understood. Lockdown protocols disengaging, V announced. Station systems returning to normal operation. Cass turned from the console. This way, she said, gesturing toward the corridor that would take them to the residential section, in the opposite direction from where the artifact was actually hidden. As the group moved out, Cass positioned herself near Eli, whispering, On my signal, head for the submersible. I'll get the artifact and meet you there. Not leaving without you, he whispered back. They reached a junction in the corridor, where another passage branched off toward the submersible bay. Cass paused as if orienting herself, then suddenly shouted, "V, Emergency Protocol 7. Instantly, emergency bulkheads slammed down throughout the station, separating the group. Cass and Eli found themselves isolated from Nea and the hegemony agents, with the corridor to the submersible bay open before them. "Run!" Cass shouted, already sprinting toward the equipment room where she'd hidden the artifact. "Get the sub ready, 2 minutes." Eli hesitated only briefly before racing toward the submersible bay. Behind them, Cass could hear pounding against the emergency bulkhead, followed by the ominous sound of cutting tools. She reached the equipment room and went straight to the hidden compartment, retrieving the containment unit. The crystal inside still pulsed with its eerie light, but the rhythm seemed different now, faster, more urgent. "Status V?" Cass asked as she secured the unit to her belt and grabbed a small emergency pack. "Station structural integrity at 47% and declining," V reported. "Estimate complete platform collapse in approximately 12 minutes. Hegemony agents have breached the first emergency bulkhead and are proceeding." "Time to go," Cass muttered. She paused. "V, initiate data transfer to my personal storage. Full backup of your core matrix." "Captain," the AI sounded almost surprised. "I'm not leaving you behind," Cass said firmly. "Transfer your core routines to my secure storage." "Processing request," V acknowledged. "Transfer commencing." While the data transfer proceeded, Cass gathered a few additional items she couldn't bear to leave behind. Her personal log, a small box of family mementos, and specialized tools for her dive suit. "Transfer complete," V announced as Cass finished packing. "Core matrix secured to your personal storage." "Good girl," Cass said. "Now, final assignments. Initiate complete station lockdown once we launch the submersible. That will trap Director Sen and the hegemony agents on a failing station," V pointed out. "They have their own transport," Cass replied grimly, "and they brought this on themselves." She headed for the door, then paused one last time, looking back at the station that had been her home for 3 years. Despite its flaws, Deep Blue had been her sanctuary, her achievement, her freedom. "Goodbye, old girl," she murmured, then sprinted for the submersible bay. Eli had the small vessel powered up and ready, its hatch open and waiting. The submersible was Cass's emergency escape craft, a compact but capable vehicle designed for deep-water transport. It could maintain life support for 2 people for up to a week. "Cutting it close," Eli called as she leaped aboard, sealing the hatch behind her. "Had to get a few things," Cass said, dropping into the pilot's seat. "Strap in, this is going to be a rough departure." She activated the launch sequence, and the bay doors below began to open, revealing the dark ocean beneath. Just as the launch clamps released, a violent shudder ran through the entire platform. "Hull integrity compromised in the central section," Eli reported, reading from the status display. "They must have detonated another charge." "Bastards," Cass muttered as she guided the submersible down through the launch bay and away from Deep Blue. Through the viewport, they could see the platform listing heavily to one side, sections already beginning to break apart. "Setting course for Port Haven," Cass said, programming the navigation system. "It's the closest independent outpost, about 600 kilometers west." "The consortium will have people there," Eli warned. "Probably. But so will others who don't love the consortium, will have options." She activated the submersible's stealth systems. "For now, we need to get clear and decide what to do about our passenger." She nodded toward the containment unit, now secured in a storage compartment. "What did that agent mean about partial activation?" Eli asked, eyeing the unit cautiously. "I don't know," Cass admitted. "But when I touched it, there was definitely an exchange. I got fragments, images, sensations. Nothing concrete. And you think you triggered something, started some kind of process?" "Maybe." Cass guided the submersible deeper, using the ocean's thermoclines to mask their signature. "But if that's true, both the consortium and this hegemony group knew it was a possibility. They sent me down there expecting something like this might happen." Eli processed this. "So we were expendable assets from the beginning. But something tells me they weren't expecting the node to respond the way it did." That hegemony agent seemed genuinely concerned about activation timelines. They reached a depth of roughly 300 meters. Cass set the autopilot and turned to face Eli directly. "We need to decide what to do next," she said. That artifact is dangerous, possibly civilization-endingly dangerous. But now we have two powerful organizations hunting us for it. Eli ran a hand through his hair in frustration. We could try to reach Earth authorities, but it would take months to get back to core systems. And we can't just destroy it, Cass added. Not without understanding what it is. For all we know, damaging it could trigger whatever catastrophe everyone's worried about. So that leaves us with finding our own experts, Cass said decisively. People who understand this technology, but aren't aligned with either the consortium or the hegemony. I know someone, Eli said after a moment's thought. Dr. Abrams. She was my mentor at the academy before the consortium recruited her. She's brilliant with quantum archaeology, and she left the consortium last year after some kind of ethical dispute. Where is she now? Last I heard, working at an independent research station in the Tau Ceti system. But she maintains a field lab on Halcyon, the mining colony in this system. It's about 4 days from here in this submersible, and you think she can help us understand what this thing is. If anyone can, it's Abrams. Plus, she has no love for the consortium since they tried to weaponize her research. Sounds perfect, Cass said, but Halcyon is a commercial port. Won't that be the first place they look for us? Probably, Eli admitted, but it's also crowded enough to get lost in, and I know people there who can help us stay under the radar. For the next hour, they maintained tense silence as Cass navigated through underwater topography, using ridges and thermal layers to mask their signature. Finally, they reached a continental shelf, and Cass guided them over the edge into the vast darkness of a deep trench. We should be safe for now, she said, re-engaging the autopilot. The depth interferes with most scanning technologies, and they won't expect us to take the long way around. Eli relaxed visibly, so we have a few days to figure out what to do with our dangerous cargo. He glanced toward the storage compartment. Speaking of which, we should probably check on it. Cass nodded reluctantly. The thought of opening the containment unit made her uneasy, but they needed to monitor the artifact for any changes. We can use the submersible's internal scanner first, she suggested. Get some baseline readings without direct contact. She activated the vessel's scientific suite and directed its sensors toward the storage compartment. The readings appeared on the main display, showing energy patterns disturbingly similar to brain activity. That's not normal for an inanimate object, Eli observed, leaning closer. It's almost like it's thinking or processing, Cass suggested. Maybe when I touched it, I started some kind of boot sequence. If that's true, we need to know how far along that sequence is and what happens when it completes. They carefully removed the containment unit and placed it on a work surface. Through the transparent top, they could see the crystal matrix still pulsing with internal light, but the rhythm had changed since Cass had first encountered it. The pulses are more structured now, Eli noted, almost like code. As the scanner collected data, Cass studied the crystal. The internal light seemed to react to her gaze, pulsing more rapidly when she focused directly on it. It knows we're watching it, she murmured. That's not creepy at all, Eli muttered. Analysis confirms increasing complexity in the energy pattern. It's definitely building towards something. How long do we have? Eli shook his head. Impossible to say without more data. Could be hours, could be days. We need more information, Cass said, reaching for the containment unit's seal. Eli's hand shot out to stop her. Whoa, you're not seriously considering touching that thing again. I've already made contact once. If I try again, deliberately this time, maybe I can learn something useful. Or maybe it'll fry your brain or fully activate and do whatever catastrophic thing everyone's afraid of, Eli countered. You have a better idea. Eli hesitated, then his expression shifted. Actually, maybe. My quantum relay buoys, they're designed to create entangled communication channels. What if we could use one to establish a buffer connection to the artifact? Sample its outputs without direct neural contact. Cass considered this. Would that work? In theory, the relay technology was inspired by ancient systems not unlike what we're dealing with here. Eli grew animated. We'd need to modify one of the buoys to act as a receiver rather than a transmitter. Less risky than me touching it directly, Cass pointed out, and less risky than waiting until it fully activates on its own terms. Eli nodded. I've got 2 spare relay buoys in our equipment. I'll get started on the modifications. Hours passed as Eli worked, occasionally muttering to himself or asking Cass to hand him specific tools. The submersible continued its journey through the trench, using the ocean depth for cover. Finally, Eli straightened up. "I think it's ready," he announced, holding up the modified buoy. It was smaller than Cass had expected, about the size of her palm, with delicate sensors now exposed. The quantum entanglement core acts as a buffer between us and the artifact. It should allow us to receive and interpret data without direct neural connection. Eli set the device beside the containment unit. "The trick is establishing the initial link, which means opening the containment unit," Cass surmised. "Briefly, yes. I've programmed the buoy to establish connection as quickly as possible." They secured themselves in the submersible's rear section, making sure the vessel was on a stable autopilot course. Eli positioned his tablet to record all data from the modified buoy. "Ready when you are." Cass took a deep breath. "On 3, 1, 2, 3. She carefully unsealed the containment unit and lifted the top just enough for the buoy to have direct access to the crystal inside. The artifact's pulsing light immediately intensified, as if eager for the connection. Eli activated the buoy, and it responded with its own patterned light, establishing a visual rhythm that gradually synchronized with the crystal's pulses. "It's working," Eli whispered. "The buoy is creating a quantum entanglement field." He was cut off as the buoy suddenly flared brightly and began to vibrate. On his tablet, data streamed in at an alarming rate, faster than the display could render it. "It's receiving something," Eli said, eyes wide. "A massive data transfer." The crystal's pulsing accelerated dramatically, its light now so bright it was difficult to look at directly. The buoy's vibration increased until it was audibly humming. "Seal it," Eli said urgently. "The buffer's overloading." Cass quickly closed the containment unit. The buoy's light and vibration gradually subsided, but the device continued to process whatever it had received. "Did we get anything useful?" Cass asked. Eli was already scanning through the collected data, his expression growing increasingly amazed. "This is incredible. The amount of information is staggering, but it's structured, organized in a way that suggests deliberate communication. Can you understand any of it?" "Not directly, no. It's not in any language or code I recognize. But the patterns—" He looked up at Cass, excitement mingling with concern. "I think this was just the first layer, a handshake protocol. The artifact recognized our attempt and responded with this data package as a preliminary exchange. So it's definitely sentient. It has adaptive intelligence at minimum," Eli confirmed. "And it was definitely waiting for contact." Cass felt a chill. That aligns with what Nea said about activation protocols. It's not just waking up, it's reaching out. "But to what?" Eli asked. Before Cass could respond, the submersible's alarm system blared to life. She rushed to the pilot's station, checking the sensor readouts. "Proximity alert," she reported tensely. "Something's approaching from behind us, moving fast." "Consortium?" Eli asked, joining her. "Wrong configuration, must be hegemony." Cass enhanced the sensor image, revealing a sleek vessel designed for underwater pursuit. "How did they find us?" "The artifact," Eli realized. "When we opened the containment unit, its energy signature must have spiked enough for their sensors to detect. They were already searching in the trench," Cass said, "just waiting for a signal. And we gave them one." Cass took manual control, increasing speed and adjusting their course to a more erratic pattern. "They're gaining on us. This vessel isn't designed for pursuit evasion." The pursuing craft was closing rapidly. On the scanner, Cass could now see it was charging some kind of forward-mounted system, likely a disabling device rather than a weapon. They didn't want to destroy the artifact. "Options?" Eli asked tensely. Cass quickly assessed their situation. The trench provided cover from surface vessels but limited their maneuvering options. They couldn't outrun their pursuer, and their vessel had no defensive capabilities. Then she noticed something on the topographic readout, a narrow side fissure branching off about 2 kilometers ahead. "There," she said, pointing to the display. "That fissure is barely wide enough for our vessel. If we can reach it before they get into disabling range." "Worth a shot," Eli agreed. Cass pushed their engines to maximum. The pursuing vessel continued to gain, but more slowly now. 1 kilometer to the fissure, Cass reported. "They'll be in weapons range in 30 seconds. Can we make it? We're about to find out. Cass could see the fissure on visual now, a dark crack that seemed impossibly narrow. Behind them, the hegemony vessel had closed to within disabling range and was preparing to fire. Brace for impact, Cass warned as she sent the submersible into a steep dive and a sharp turn toward the fissure. The maneuver came just as the hegemony vessel fired its disabling pulse. The energy burst grazed their stern, sending power fluctuations through the submersible but missing a direct hit. Cass fought the controls, guiding the damaged vessel toward the narrow opening. For a terrifying moment, it seemed they wouldn't make it. The fissure looked too small, their approach angle too steep. Then they were through, scraping along both sides with a terrible screeching sound, but maintaining forward momentum into the narrow channel beyond. They can't follow, Eli observed, watching as the larger vessel attempted to decelerate. But they'll notify their surface ships. They'll be waiting when we emerge. If we emerge, Cass corrected grimly. That hit did some damage, propulsion efficiency down to 68%, hull integrity compromised in 2 sections. She studied the diagnostics. We can still make it to Halcyon, but we'll be limping in. Over the next 3 days, they traveled cautiously through the underwater terrain, making repairs where possible and taking turns monitoring both their pursuers and the increasingly active crystal. The artifact's pulsing had settled into a regular pattern, but the intensity of its light continued to grow steadily. By the 4th day, they were approaching Halcyon's underwater docking facilities. The mining colony was built into the side of a massive underwater plateau with both surface and submerged access points. We should approach through the maintenance tunnels, Eli suggested. Less monitoring, easier to slip in unnoticed. Good thinking, Cass agreed. How do we contact your Dr. Abrams without alerting the authorities? She has a private communications channel for former students. I can send a coded message once we're docked. Eli looked at her seriously. But Cass, we need to be prepared. The artifact is clearly building towards some kind of activation event. What if we can't stop it? Then we make sure it happens somewhere it can't hurt anyone, Cass said firmly. If Abrams can't help us, we take it back out to deep ocean, as far from any settlements as possible. And us with it, Eli asked quietly. Cass met his gaze. I'm not planning on a suicide mission, Chen, but I'm also not willing to let whatever destroyed that ancient civilization happen to ours, if that means taking some risks. Well, I've always been good at beating the odds. Eli studied her for a moment, then nodded. For what it's worth, if I had to be on the run from 2 powerful organizations with a potentially apocalyptic alien artifact, there's no one I'd rather have piloting the getaway sub. High praise, Cass said with a small smile. Now let's see if we can dock this thing without getting caught, shot, or blown up. Piece of cake, Eli replied. We've already survived a deep-sea dive, station collapse, and underwater chase. What's a little covert docking among friends? As they approached the shadowy entrance to Halcyon's maintenance tunnels, Cass felt the crystal pulse more rapidly in its container, almost as if sensing their approach to civilization, or perhaps to something else waiting there. Whatever answers Dr. Abrams might provide, Cass had a feeling they were running out of time to decide what to do with their dangerous cargo. The ancient technology was awakening, and soon they would have to face whatever that truly meant for themselves and possibly for all of humanity.